And I think the next panel, where we are talking about the future, is the best in order to study more the technological perspective, because we cannot take the computer out of the question. It's really impossible. We are living with computerized things. Even the clockwork now is digital. We are using the mobile every hour. We can't live without emails, and we can't live without these technological methods. So the idea of coming back to a classroom where there is no computer, there is no use of technological means, I think it's an idea of the past. So we should try to combine the best of both worlds, the best of the old world and the best of the new world. But in order to do so, we should also hear the actual generation. We must see and talk about the future. And I think that's what's going to happen now in the panel that is going to be moderated by Professor Rui Guerra da Fonseca from my faculty, one of the youngest and the brightest among the youngest colleagues that we have in Lisbon. And we have the pleasure of having two other youngsters in our helpers, even if we know them for a long time. Professor Antunica, that is always chasing the less technological idea, the less technological measure to introduce it in their own classes. And Dimitrius, Dr. Dimitrius Parashu from Hanover, that is also very interesting in these themes. So I believe it will be a good panel in order to finish our conversation of today. And I give immediate the floor to Professor Rui Guerra da Fonseca.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Professor, for giving me the floor. It's the greatest honor to be here chairing this session in an homage to Professor Fenge. My first words are for him. Is not present at the moment, but my first words are for Professor Fenge. I am, I believe, a third or even fourth generation HELPIS member. And this means that I only met Professor Fenge once, and this was in person, of course, and this was in our last meeting in person in Hanover. Anyway, I would like to thank Professor Fenge for the creation of HELPIS, which of course allows us today to be here and allows me particularly to be present in this forum and having made already such good friends as the ones that are going to speak after me. Particularly Arndt and Dimitrius Parashu. So many of the things that I wanted to highlight in this brief first intervention of mine, because I am substituting Paco Balaguer and I cannot match him, of course. So this is just a brief introduction to prepare the floor to Arndt and to Dimitrius. But as I was saying, many of the things I wanted to highlight today have links with the previous interventions, namely the initial intervention by Professor Fenge, and also Friedrich Gelman's intervention after that. And interestingly, also the last remarks by Professor Kaisis. I already wrote a text on distance learning and video-based academic contributions for for the last book we had on this, coordinated by Friedrich Hermann. So I do not intend to go back to that. I am a bit skeptical on many of these possibilities, but I believe that, as Professor Kaisis, I think, was stressing, technology came to stay, and it is impossible for us from now on to ignore what is going on. Like Professor Vasco said, we must pay attention to the youngest generation, to the means that they want to use, and of course the video-based learning or distance learning or e-classes came about in this very specific context of COVID, but I think they came to stay. I'm saying this because e-classes came in the context of necessity, of needs. Well, after this need, another will come. Because like Michael Oakeshott used to say, there is something called the sovereignty of the felt needs. So after COVID, it will be something else, either energy problems regarding traveling, or even traveling costs. I know in our university, we have master theses and even PhD theses being discussed on the Zoom platform because not only because of COVID anymore, but also because it is very costly for people to travel. And so this is another felt need that is coming about. And so I don't know in what particular framework, but I believe that that these ways came to stay. Of course, we should not eliminate personal contact. This is something not. This is simply not thinkable. And even if we turn our attention to the Erasmus program, Erasmus was always such a big hit because of personal contact, because of the learning, of the general learning, not only law, but human learning that it enhances. And if one of the biggest conquests in Europe were the Erasmus babies, that would simply not be possible if everything would be done on a distant basis. But anyway, I think that it is possible that we as law professors are on a verge of a creative destruction, meaning that our traditional instruments and our traditional positioning towards teaching is inevitably changing. We might not be certain of how much and how it is changing, but it is. And technology is, of course, in the central debate of this, because new technological means, and when I speak about technology, I'm thinking not only about distance learning, of course, but databases, as was mentioned before, algorithms, audiobooks. Audiobooks are a major change in the way we work, because we were used to write and still are extensively, and audiobooks are changing the game, as in a certain way our LPsville Law Review is also changing the game. So our way of working and our way to approach students is changing. I would not say radically as of yet, but it is changing rapidly and intensely. These new technological means provide students with something that we cannot actually compete with. It is information. We as human beings cannot supersede technological means giving information to students. Let's just take one example. Collections of legislation that we use to organize are much more useful for students, not in paper, but in digital formats, because they are searchable, they are usable in other ways, and they are portable, much more portable than books, of course. And this is also true for us, meaning that the information that technology provides combines itself with a certain kind of knowledge that I'm pretty sure we cannot compete with. So in order to avoid our creative destruction and also enhance our role as law professors, I think we should concentrate more on wisdom and less on knowledge, meaning that it is more important for the future. It is more important to provoke the students with complex questions in order to claim from them complex thinking, to test if simple answers actually make sense. Because we must preserve ourselves to things that only human beings can do. And these things only human beings can do. Placing complex questions and demanding complex reasoning in order to test the simplicity of answers, this is something that only human beings can do. Can this be done online with e-classes? Well, some of it, yes, some of it cannot, I believe, because distance learning only works, or distance meeting like we are having here today, only works, I think, if you have a pre-interest that allows you to focus on what is happening. Because if that's not the case, then it's almost impossible to create interest online. I think it's very, very difficult to create interest online unless it is an interior and psychological process, like when you are watching a movie. But this is not the case. This is not a movie. These are lectures and conferences. So you must be, students must be willing to be focused. Otherwise, it will not work. And for this to happen, I think that it must be promoted personally before using online technology. And so this is, I think, is one of the greatest challenges that we are going to face in the future, which is how to leave technology for knowledge and preserve ourselves for wisdom, preserving ourselves to promote complex reasoning that machines and algorithms will not be able to substitute. I don't mean complicated reasoning, because of course an algorithm can be very complicated. I mean complex reasoning with judgment. This is what we must students for. Less professional training and more philosophical or legal philosophical training to put questions forward and to train to give simple answers through complex reasoning. So this was just a start. I believe I even spoke more than I should, and so I will immediately give the floor to Arndt Kuhneke, to my good colleague and friend Arndt Kuhneke. It is a pleasure to see you online, of course, but we have a pre-interest in listening to you. So we are pretty much focused on what you are going to say. You have the floor. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction, Rui, and it's a pleasure being here. Great honor to speak at the occasion, homage to Professor Fenge. And Rui, you introduced, you said it's about creating interest. And so it's some pressure on me because I'm trying to create interest for the audience now and to present you some of my thoughts about how modern teaching could be practiced in the future. For that, I would like to share the screen because I prepared some presentation, which should underline how, my thoughts. Now, put it the other way, this presentation should also try to visualize my thoughts about modern teaching from 2022 onwards. Don't be irritated because here at Fribourg University, the screen is down on me, so I need to take a look down. So I'm not losing my connection with you, hopefully, but my main idea is sharing the screen and presenting you my thoughts. First of all, once again, thanks a lot for making me part of this panel, because it's really an honor to be among these distinguished colleagues, and it's an honor to give a short homage to Professor Fenge, who with his idea of founding this ELPIS network in the 80s was kind of ahead of his time. And he serves as a role model with his innovative ideas. And now I don't have the aspiration myself to present something being ahead of my time, but at least let me try to share some of my thoughts about modern law teaching in the future. So I would like to start with the presentation now. And hang on a second. How does it work? I need to click on here. Technical problems, that's always the first thing happening. Yes, like this. Challenges of the future teaching is, first of all, how did we start? It started the old way of teaching, like Professor Fenge and also some others already mentioned. We delivered some content shaped for just the universal consumption in the form of the traditional lectures. But that's the old way, and we need to be modern. University needs to keep pace with modern life, with the modern student life. That's why we face some challenge. We need to keep pace with the new way. We need to try to be modern, and the role of the instructor changed. The expectations widened, and also our area of responsibility is extended. We are not only a lecturer anymore. We also need to coach the students. We need to give them some guidance. We need to support them and communicate with the students as they navigate through content and data, which is enormous at the time. You already mentioned how much sources are available in the internet. So we need to give the students some guidance, because otherwise they will be lost in these thousands and millions of informations. So the difference between the old way of teaching and the new form, the new way, is that we need to truly valuing how the students think and what they really need. So the teacher's task is, we somehow need to get into the minds of the students to figure out what they value, how they think, what they need. And for that, I think the approach for the future, which was already mentioned at several speeches here before, is kind of establishing modern hybrid form of teaching, hybrid environment for teaching, so that we, the teachers, do not only appear like I'm appearing here just in front of Gerhard at Fribourg University in presence, but that I also appear online for the other participants of our panel here at the conference in the homage of Professor Fenge. So the modern hybrid teaching for me is based on 3 different pillars. The first thing, how we should start with the concept of modern hybrid teaching, is we already need to appear in the students' individual sphere of learning. Not just in the classrooms, but we already need to take the students, appear at home in their individual learning sphere in person somehow. And that means before each class, the students need to receive certain tasks for self-directed learning. And there are different means of tasks, different sorts of tasks. We could deliver them. For example, like it's more or less the old-fashioned way, give them some reading material from textbooks, but of course delivered online, that it's always and everywhere accessible for the students. Or we could give them links to some other online sources, or a bit more personal approach, which I usually prefer, is to give them some instructor provided videos or podcasts where you in person as the professor personally address your students, so that you not just use material which was produced by somebody else, but that the students always have the connection. Hey, this is my teacher giving me the first instruction while I'm at home, preparing me for the classroom. Classroom is the second part of this modern hybrid teaching, as I have it in mind. It's the in-class time. And of course, ideally, it should be in a physical classroom where we all meet face to face. But of course, in times of the pandemic, we need to replace it somehow. And therefore, it could also be a virtual classroom. So how does it start? The inside the classroom, the in-class time. I guess we should start having delivered some general content already pre-class to collect and find a solid basis for the students. So we need to check if they really understood the material we submitted them online in advance. So therefore, it's the so-called readiness assurance process to check if the students are prepared for the class. So take about 20% of your in-class time to check that the students understood the concepts, the terms, and the explanations you delivered pre-class. The main part of the in-class time should be dedicated to team application exercises. It's not doing an old-fashioned lecture. It's let the students work with the knowledge, with the material you submitted already pre-class. And this should be the biggest part, about 80% of the whole in-class time. And according to my experience, a good way would be to divide the big class into smaller groups to enable the students to discuss certain problems or cases within their formed teams. So it means they're working on the basic knowledge, or on the basis of the knowledge they already received pre-class, and which was discussed again in this readiness assurance process, and then they work with it. So you as the teacher take the role as the moderator, giving guidance when the students sit in the classroom, discuss certain topics among each other. For example, in law classes, an ideal way would be giving them a case, dealing with the problems you presented already in the pre-class time. The teams discuss the problems, they discuss the cases within their own teams, and then they should present it inside the classroom so that the inner team discussions become an inter-team class debate and discussion being guided, moderated by you as the modern teacher. But the in-class time is not the last part of the modern hybrid teaching. It goes on because the students go home and they keep on thinking about what they did in class. Therefore, they also need assistance and guidance after class. So the after class time is the third pillar of the hybrid teaching. So it's meant to be used for reinforcing the learning after class by, for example, clarifying the class discussion. If there are still some upcoming questions, you as the teacher are supposed to give answers. So on what communication platform ever, I personally like this personal approach, having some WhatsApp group for each of my courses so that the students can always ask some questions within the classroom and but also personal to me so that I can answer what's coming up as some questions after the class. You could also upload some quizzes where the students individually could check their knowledge if they really understood the core of the class. And this is the innovative part of my presentation now, because Vaško is typical in giving some challenges. And when he was asking me, so think about some innovative concepts, how teaching could be in future, I needed to become creative. And this is what I call the 24/7 e-lecture assistance. I will show you and explain you how it works. For that, first of all, I need to do something for my voice. For this, what I call e-lecture, you need modern tools. And what you see here, apart from the mobile phone, the smartphone here, on the right-hand side, it's kind of the Amazon family. This Echo Dots, these Echo Shows, whatever, which is quite common now in the modern world, having these devices at home, communicating with this lady called Alexa. But using that idea for university, it's not Alexa, it's called e-lecture. And it's kind of a blended learning, because here in my case, each student would be supplied with any of these devices according to their choice. And you see there's a branding on it from the university or from the lecture here in my case. So these tools should be used to give the students this 24/7 e-lecture access to your class being delivered, not just online, but also via audio, via video on these shows. For example, you appear on the screens of these dots. You appear as a teacher on the screens of the mobile phones, and of course also like in a video on the screens of the students. So this is the way how you could easily address the students' individual learning sphere, giving them 24/7 assistance without being available 24/7. Because you prepared everything via videos. For the tools, for example, you could use with the monitors. You are available on the communication platform, social media, for example, WhatsApp, or like we do it right now, give them the chance to meet with you at least once in a week, visually in a virtual classroom, to have kind of classroom atmosphere. This is what I called the e-lecture approach. And let me show you how it will work in reality. Of course, just some innovative utopia, but I guess it could be realized if there's anybody who is going for it. So a student would open the application which is needed on the mobile phone, in my case about European Union law. It's my e-lecture. Either you address it on the mobile phone or you ask this little advice, please e-lecture, open something for me. Here, it's an interactive course being delivered by me as their professor. So either you can appear there as an icon or as in present, whatever you prefer. And the students could use it as they use this Amazon Echo tools. This would be the first screen to access. And here you see the professor is appearing on the screens of the students, and the students could ask you anything. And there are three means of assistance being provided, either here with a video, with a document, or with an audio file. So the students can easily choose how they prefer you as a teacher explaining certain topics. And here in my example, it would work like this. The student would ask, e-lecture, please explain the difference between a regulation and a directive in EU law. And then the answer would come. The professor appears and you as a student would hear the voice of your professor, because that's pre-recorded for all kinds of questions. And the answer would be, a regulation is defined in Article 200 88 Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union as measure which has general application shall be binding in its entirety and directly applicable in the member states. In contrast to that, a directive is binding for each addressed member state only to the result to be achieved, but leaves the choice of form and methods to the national authorities. So then that's the answer to the question the student used this e-lecture application for. But maybe the student is not satisfied with the answer. Therefore, on the next page of the app, the following signs appear. The professor is there again, and you as a student could opt for repeating the things which were said to get some more information or to ask some further questions. This is the idea I have about how future teaching in the years 22 onwards might work. Of course, I know it's a lots of work to provide all possible information within this application for the students as video files, as audio, and supplemented with the necessary documents. But I guess if some professors would take this challenge and try to really feed this app with sufficient information, it would be an amazing tool for each student to use anytime, anywhere, and as much as they like. So far about my thoughts, how modern teaching might look like from 2022 onwards. And thank you for listening. And I'm curious about your ideas and comments.
Arndt, thank you very much for your colorful proposal and for your intervention. I believe that it's better that we move immediately to Dimitri's intervention and at the end join questions and remarks for both of you. So thank you again for this very, very interesting presentation. I would not like to give the floor to Dimitrius before we could stop the screen sharing, because I don't know if he's going to use it as well.
I wouldn't need it, but it's okay. Thank you.
You wouldn't need it. Well, okay. So if you won't need it, it's probably better that we move along, wouldn't you say?
Gladly. Thank you very much, dear Louis. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to express my special honor and pleasure to talk in this occasion within the framework of the homage to our dear Professor Fenge. And I'm also very happy to participate in this panel among friends, dear friends like Rui and Arndt. I have to admit, dear Arndt, it is never easy to fill your shoes, and it is especially difficult to talk after your presentations, but I will try to do my very best. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, some months before in the supermarket, because I tend to go to the supermarket either very early in the day or very late due to the pandemic. That is a habit now that I am going to the supermarket at these times. I was just checking out something I had to buy, and a person approached me and said, "Are you Mr. Parascu?" And I was like, how could you recognize me? Because I was with my mask like a pirate, of course, not well recognizable. And of course, I'm not wearing the things I usually wear, because usually students know me by wearing ties and I don't know, a jacket and cufflinks and stuff. So, and I was in my jeans and a pullover and with my mask. And the person who had approached me was a participant of an online course of mine within the Faculty of Law in Hanover. And she pointed out how much she liked my course. It was a course dealing with elements of European law mainly. And I have to say, I was not only smitten, I was initially shocked, of course, due to the fact that I was being recognized despite wearing a mask in the supermarket. And I'm not living directly in Hanover, so that I could expect to meet students. So the feedback which I got there regarding an online lecture which I delivered was very special to me. And I have to say, since April 2020, of course, I also had my share of experience in online lectures due to the situation, of course. Initially, my basic approach to teaching, always, of course, due to my Greek roots, is a mere Socratic approach. I always try to use certain elements of the so-called meeftiki in order to try to reach scientific truth through successive questions towards the lecture participants. And it was possible to transfer that because I consider Socrates always of being up to date. It was manageable to transfer this way of teaching also in the online lectures. We've heard in our very vivid discussion both the advantages and disadvantages of online teaching. I'm also of the opinion that the development of online teaching has come to stay, at least supplementary. But in any case, this technological elements will stay with us. And having our mind on 2022 onwards and the modern legal teaching, we will also have a proper eye on collaborations, of course, which have been made possible through pandemic situations, through the necessity of using online products. So we have, of course, the joy to have our dear friend Melanie Reed here also with us. It started in the summer semester of 2020 with a very close collaboration with our dear partners in Lisbon and our dear partners in Knoxville, Tennessee, in order to schedule so-called bilateral lectures in the first place between our faculties. And in the current semester, we have managed to advance to a certain, even more improved format, the format of the so-called ELPIS US Transatlantic legal lectures, which of course combine lectures of various lecturers, professors from our partner universities in the US and ELPIS partner universities, of course. And also it was possible, of course, to have a lecture with our dear friends from the Symbiosis Law School in Pune lately. So merely not only a transatlantic legal lecture, but also a format bringing together literally friends from around the world and lecturers from around the world. We are intending to keep doing that in the upcoming semesters, ever trying to keep up doing the good work and to even enhance, if that is possible, the number of participants, the number of lectures. That would be, of course, something which would also be helpful to bring ELPIS further to the next year, 2022 and onwards, as a factor of something which has been developed through the necessity of pandemic and has come, of course, to stay. For Hanover, we have managed to integrate this transatlantic legal lecture in a certain course for our students, which is to be delivered due to our Hanover curriculum, the so-called ELPIS colloquium. And the ELPIS colloquium, of course, has been a fixed point in the curriculum of the master's degree in European legal practice for a decade and a half already. Since the early 1980s and the beginnings of the ELPIS program in Hanover and Athens and Thessaloniki, there already existed a corresponding event, which at the same time quickly advanced to being a talent factory for aspiring young legal scholars from all over Europe, providing the participants with necessary legal information and always encouraging them to think out of the box, to explore future possibilities of all kinds. And we have managed to integrate for Hanover this ELPIS US Transatlantic Legal Lectures, as it has been formed in the current semester, within the ELPIS colloquium for the Hanover students. Therefore, combining tradition with actually, the future. What will elements which ELPIS will face in the years to come. And once more, I'd like to point out that the online products, which we were forced actually to use due to the pandemic situation, can be helpful and in certain cases are necessary to keep going, as for example in our mutual lecture series with our American friends especially. Therefore, these elements, or some of these elements, have indeed come to stay and will be able to transfer, I guess, ELPIS to the next year and to the upcoming years. I'd like to conclude with a very nice idea of my dear friend Rui, with the ELPIS moot court, which you worded yesterday in our meeting. That is a fabulous idea. Among all the other ideas, of course, which have also been expressed in yesterday's meeting and are also capable of bringing ELPIS to the next step. And especially the ELPIS moot court, I kept that in mind, would be something that could start, well, not right away, but in the upcoming semesters, and it could start in an online way. First of all, in order to be able to bring the participants from different continents together. And it could, of course, then lead also to meetings in presence at the final stages of that ELPIS moot court. But that is also something which could be something that would bring ELPIS towards the next step. So having these elements in mind, a combination of our ELPIS tradition and using these elements of technology, which are indeed helpful and capable of bringing ELPIS to the next level from 2022 onwards, having these elements in mind, I guess it is the safest to proceed. And I'd like to thank you warmly for your attention.
Thank you, Dimitrios. Thank you so much for your most interesting intervention, as always. I will refrain from comments and immediately give the floor to everyone for questions and remarks regarding both interventions or any other aspect that you want to highlight. Yes, please, I have Andreas Schwarze first on my screen. Please, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Rui. My first remark is to Arndt Könnecke. He presented, of course, a very fine and smart lecture on lecturing. But if I look to the pre-class stage and the after-class stage, this is at the university nothing new. But traditionally, we recommend to the students something they should do, and they can decide if and how they prepare before and to finish after the class. So I'm a little bit skeptical that using all these digital devices and the digital possibilities, if we are not restricting the students, taking away their freedom how to learn, and of course, taking away the freedom of teachers how to teach. So I think this should be in mind if we go more into the digital world. And the other thing is, I hope my intervention in the last part has not the impression or given the impression that I'm against digital things or digital methods or online learning or such things. But I think still the fundament and the basis of education within a university is person to person or face to face. And that, of course, is more relevant if, again, going back to Arndt Könnecke, if we coach, if we support, or if we otherwise communicate with the students. Of course, we can do that over the internet, but I think this is not the best way to do it. It helps us, of course. And of course, I appreciate the possibilities of the internet and all the digital world. As a musician and as a lover of music, I, of course, appreciate the possibilities to explore music over the internet. But to boil it down, the best way to have a musical experience is a live concert. And this is true even for learning and teaching at universities. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you very much. I had Melanie Reed on my screen, but I don't know if you still want to speak.
Yeah, I just was gonna, I really enjoyed your the presentations, Arndt and Dimitrios. You guys did a great job. I just wanted to comment that I feel that we have a very difficult job as professors in this age, because I think the way that we learned is very different, and we spent our free time differently even than the students of today, because I think we have to embrace the fact that we live in a digital world. And the students that we teach, I mean, they spend their time on Snapchat and TikTok and have very short attention spans that are used to going from texting to, you know, looking at these different apps. And so I think that we have to kind of embrace it in the sense of we have to use it not necessarily solely as a factor of teaching, but use it as a way to improve or help them learn. Because I think when Arndt was talking about his app idea, love it. I think that's great. And I think that the studies show that information moves from short-term memory to long-term memory if we use a spaced repetition concept. So we can use technology to assist us in having our students go from the short-term listening to it once in a lecture to having an app where they're consistently throughout the semester having to relearn that material, and then it moves into that long-term memory. So I think I as much as I sometimes resist this digital world and the fact that they're learning things from YouTube videos instead of reading, like I learned, trying to use that and incorporate that into our classes as an additional to support their learning, because that's kind of how they're doing it now. I mean, that's why experiential learning is so important now, because they're used to, you know, going back and forth, collaborating, and they have friends that they've never even met before in person. Like they have friends online, and they have, you know, now they have these robots that you can actually like digital robots that are your friends, but that are not like actual people. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing. But I guess what I'm saying is how awesome would it be if we followed on Art's idea of creating like some sort of LP's master app, right? That would have questions that they'd have to ask every day to themselves for like 5 minutes, because right, they have short attention spans, to learn the material to move into that long-term learning in their brain. So I really enjoyed these, and I really look forward to future collaborations to kind of exploring how we can add to our courses. So thank you.
Thanks so much. It seems that we are quickly moving towards well, there are ideas for a different help is core business with apps and moot courts. So times are changing, and we seem to have ideas to get along with it. Let's see. Any more comments, remarks, questions, please? Arndt, yes.
Thank you. So I just want to emphasize that these digital means or electronics means also, according to my experience and opinion, should just be complementary to the normal things. But two of my main experiences, especially also with distance teaching, are the following. Most important for the students is that they can reach the teacher somehow. No matter how, if they can go to your office hours or if they can contact you somehow via electronic means, the main point is when the student works on a certain topic that he or she has access to the teacher. And this is the idea, providing an app, because then once you provide all this information, but the student can access anytime, anywhere. Doesn't not need to wait till, for example, today is Saturday, next week Tuesday, when there's a new office hour of the teacher. This is not modern anymore, and this needs to be definitely changed. And the other thing is, I guess also very important for us from the teacher's side is that we keep authentic. Not everybody is up to certain teaching styles. When you go to university, enter different classrooms, all different teaching styles. You have to find your own way. And if you're not that familiar and keen on using these electronic means, leave it. Then it doesn't make really sense, because the students immediately will notice that somebody is using Instagram, but without using the right filters and not having any idea how to place him or herself in the picture the best way. So each of us needs to find his or her own way, I guess. Important is to be available, accessible for the students, but in a way you also feel comfortable with. This is what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
May I?
Yes, please.
Professor Kühneke, thank you very much for your elaborated program. This is really very effective. He's gone out of the room, so there is no use to put the question anymore. So let me put a question to the Dimitris. You mentioned Socrates, and Socrates used to say moderation in all things. Is this to understand in the future that we will have an hybrid system, moderation in all things. How do you think about that?
Well, thank you very much, dear Professor, for the very to-the-point question. I think that the approach of Socrates can be used, and I have well tried to use it in lectures in presence, in hybrid lectures, and in online ones. And the only difference is that in the online situation, you are not always capable of seeing the faces of the participants, which would help to get to a certain necessary level of interaction. But in these cases in which the cameras are on, even in the online situation, in my humble experience, my trying to getting to answers through questions has proved to be effective in the groups in which I had the opportunity to teach. Therefore, my answer would be that the approach, as the holistic approach, would be fitting even in the year 2022, of course, regardless the way of or the mode of the class in which you are, be it online or hybrid or in presence.
Right. Thank you. Now I see Professor Kineke is in the room. May I ask you something, Professor Kineke? One of the most important moments in the life of the students is, as we know, the exam. How do you think about that? Digitally or in another way? You have given us a system of teaching, but we have the exams at the end, and after half a century, I have the feeling that students are very interested at the end on the exams. How do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a big question. Thank you for asking. So what do we prepare the students for? To be able to freely think, to use the legal tools for solving cases, or just to learn something by heart, like some of you just mentioned, explaining this exam period when somebody just wrote down 5 pages learned by heart. I'm not a friend of online exams, because there it's mostly checking just knowledge, and how can you really control that the students have this knowledge on their own, or just take it from their mobile phones, their smart apps, their smart watches or whatever. So I guess that the main task is really to provide the students different means of material, preparing them for this old style exam. But the question is, yeah, if for the long run, there also needs to be something adjusted in the way how we do the exams. But having taught at different universities all over Europe, the technique of making exams is also different. For example, thinking back to my Turkish times, is just reproducing knowledge. They would learn by heart the textbook, and if you ask any question not being included in the textbook, they would be lost. So this kind of learning I would not support, but of course try to support the students, take the things, the tools, apart from or in addition to the knowledge they need for the exams from different sources, and also check that they use some decent tools, some decent sources, because that's the other part of the idea I had, creating some app. When you create an app for your own course, at least you have it in your hands what kind of information is provided to the students, because I had it so many times that they said, "Oh, teacher, I found something in the internet on YouTube or whatever, but it's completely nonsense." But nobody helps them to pick the valuable sources and erase the unvaluable ones. So short answer, yes, in favor of still written exams in presence, but trying to assist them, providing knowledge and additional sources also online.
Well, I would like to be a student, but unfortunately I am not. If I had the opportunity to follow your system, which is the digital teaching, very good in my mind, excellent. My question would be, at the end, in a physical exam, would I have the right to have my computer with me to go to the internet?
No, of course not.
Not at all.
Your
Why not?
hard disk
Why
is
not?
here.
Why not? Those informations are open to everybody. Why not? I would like, of course, you say no, but I say, why not? A problem must be approached by all ways we have, all means we have now, and the digital means are there. Everything is there. So we have to find out, to search in the computer, in everything, and to give an answer in the same way in which we could give an answer in our office, or not.
A question I also asked myself, sorry, if I can quickly answer. Many times when I was still a student, we had to learn so many definitions by heart, using them in the first state exam. In the second state exam, we could use the commentaries, and everything was available beside us. So that's the big question. I cannot change any system just by giving my classes. It's the change of the whole expectations from the legal sphere. What do we want the students to learn? Do we want them to be able to access everything? Then I'm with you. Let them also use all that stuff during the exams. Or do we want them at least to have some basic knowledge on their own hard disk? Then they still need to learn certain things, and they are not allowed to use these digital means during their exams.
Yes, it's something very, if we give informations, or if we give methods, way of thinking, different approaches to the same problem, and at the end, we see the interests which are playing in this solution the main or the most important role, and to ask, is this the important role or not? I think this is a way of working, of approaching things nowadays, and according to my opinion, at least me, I have not the right to stop young students to have Zugang, approach to access to the digital information. They live with this. They are born with this. They must have it. Of course, this is a new generation. Even if I am not in the position to understand that well, I must respect that. This is another area now. We have to see that. Excuse me, as a Greek professor, I am very enthusiastic about my ideas, even if they are very poor, but this is the way of thinking. Excuse me for that.
Thank you. We still have a question from Andres Schwarza, and I believe now another one from Dimitra. And possibly after this, we could close the panel, and Professor Vasco wants to intervene as well. Okay, so 3 interventions. Andreas, please.
Yes, to the last point of discussion, of course, you can test the students with different exams. So either you can say, okay, they have no open book, no open internet, no open world. So they have to say what they know by heart, what are the structures and so on. So this is one kind of examination. And the other kind of examination is you give them, let's say, a practical case, and they can use the internet and all the other sources to solve this case. And if you look to German legal education, we have these 2 phases. At the university exam, you have no open book, no internet, and so on. But then after the referendariat, you can use all the sources. You can look to commentaries and so on. So I think these are 2 stages of examination. And I'm a little bit skeptical to give the students at the beginning of their studies or during their early studies open book exams. And the other thing is, this is to Arndt Könnecke, Of course, written exams I would like to have in presence. You said why, because cheating and so on. But if you have oral exams, I think it's possible to do that online over the internet. So this is a little bit more possible than with written exams. Thank you.
Thank you. Dimitra, please.
Yes, I have also a remark to the last point. I remember my time as a student. We had a professor at the University of Thessaloniki, Professor Margaritis. He was our lecturer for criminal procedure, and he was very innovative at the time because he allowed us to bring all our books to the examination. So we went to the university with a lorry load of books, and I remember it was the most difficult question, the most difficult exam I had, because it depends on how you put the questions to the students. So of course you can provide the students with the material, but you have to ask the question differently.
Thank you. And Professor Vasco, please.
Yes, that's another topic we should discuss more intensively, the question of assessment. There is a problem, especially in Germany. One of the reasons why the German did not accede to the Erasmus combined process of Bologna was because in the field of law, there was the exam, the final exam, the state exam. But the state exam is a model of an exam that proved very well, but it cannot be the only way of assessment. The assessment must be combined. Open questions, oral examinations, moot courts, papers, everything must be combined in the way of assessment. We should combine these new techniques, also techniques of teaching, in new techniques of assessment. And that's something that we should put in our agenda to discuss, probably in the next conference or in the next meeting, because there are so many things that we can do in order to assess, coming from quiz games to complicated papers, to exams mixing oral and written parts, oral exams mixing the simulated cases. Well, there's a universe of solutions that we should discuss and that the students are asking us to try them, because they are also innovative and they are very important. I'll give Rui Guerra da Fonseca now the word, but I would like in the end to make a final consideration, and I think that we should close this marathon, a real marathon on discussing of pedagogic themes, but that was really very interesting and with different opinions that created a great fun, but at least a great intellectual pleasure, and also it was very fruitful for our task as professor. Rui, after you conclude the panel.
Thank you, Professor. This is just really to close the panel. I would like to thank both Arndt and Dimitrios for their interventions. Of course, thank everyone for their questions and remarks. My last words is, of course, to Professor Fenge again in this important circumstance. And I give the floor back to Professor Vasco Pereira Silva to whatever he sees fit.
Thank you very much. Well, we are here from 9:30, 8:30 in Portugal, 10:30 in Greece. We have been discussing for more than 4 hours, intensively new ways of teaching and old ways of teaching. And we combined different generations. Rui talked about 4 generations. In the beginning, I was thinking in 3, but as a matter of fact, we are already 4 generations. That comes from our papi, Professor Fenger, and his colleagues that created the Alpes project. Then it comes to the younger generation, those that we formed, and that now are also teaching and have new ideas. And in the middle, we have 2 different generations that are all together. And that's the important thing that we learn in Alpes, that we should combine all the views and all the methods and try to get the best from all generations, from all the ways of teaching, because we are in a never-ending task. A task that is the most beautiful task in the world. That is learning and teaching, teaching and learning. That's the wonderful experience that we are doing in our lives, that we are doing for centuries, from the Socratic methods, the old Socratic methods, to the new Socratic methods with an European tendency or an American tendency. We are always recreating the way of doing the same thing, the same task of teaching and learning, and that is the best thing that we could do. And I believe that for Professor Fenger, the best way of honoring him was talking about this, having him here, and having all the people that followed him, all these new generations that appeared, some that he formed, some that he met, some other that are youngest, and combine all this thing together means that Alpes has a future, Alpes is a hope, and we keep on doing this. And to finish it, I don't know if you want to have the last word, my dear friend Ilma.
You see, Professor Silva, this is the tragic of digitalization. I can digitally participate to the party, but I cannot at all enjoy a German belegtes Brot. Das ist eine tragische Situation. Lieber Hilmar, bleibe gesund und weitermachen, und wir sind alle dabei. Vielen Dank.
I will do my very best. I will
much.
do my very best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well,
Thank
next time,
you.
next time in Fribourg, we will have not just well, lunch and dinner, but we also have the visit to the chocolate factory and to the Gruyere factory. So we will have time also to be together, to join our presence, and to make also a party of teaching and learning, which is what we are doing now. Thank you very much. It was a good experience.
Thank you.
And I hope you enjoyed as much as I have enjoyed it. And see you. Have a nice Christmas and a Happy New Year. And
Also to you.
Everybody.
See you in the next video emission and in person in Fribourg in May.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Fenger.
Have a nice time, Christmas and New Year. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Professor Fenger.